Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. You know how this works. We dig deep so you don't have to, bringing you the core insights from a mountain of material.
And today, we're tackling a true classic in the productivity world, David Allen's Getting Things Done.
This book has been like the Bible for anyone who's ever felt overwhelmed by their to-do list, which, let's face it, is probably all of us at some point.
Yeah, and Allen isn't just some self-help guru. The guy spent decades advising major companies, government agencies, even the U.S. Navy.
New York Life, World Bank, Ford Foundation, L.L. Bean. He's worked with them all.
He's been there, done that, and Getting Things Done is the culmination of all that experience honed over 30-plus years.
And it's not just an American thing either. The book's been translated into over 30 languages, and Allen himself is now based in Amsterdam. It's a global phenomenon.
True. So for everyone listening, our mission today is to give you the most powerful takeaways from Getting Things Done, the stuff you can actually put into practice right away to boost your productivity and maybe, just maybe, feel a little less stressed. Less stressed, sign me up.
Right. You don't need to become a GTD black belt to get real value from this stuff. Even a few key insights can make a difference. So let's get into it. One of the things that jumps out right away is the 2-minute rule. Seems almost deceptively simple.
Yeah, deceptively simple. It's just, if an action takes less than 2 minutes, do it right now.
Right. When you think about it, it's common sense.
Totally. But think about all those tiny tasks we let pile up.
Oh, I know. Respond to that email, filing a paper, leaving a quick voicemail.
Each one by itself is nothing.
But they add up, right? And suddenly your mental bandwidth is gone.
Exactly. The 2-minute rule isn't about being perfectly tidy. It's about clearing your mind.
It's like those little notification badges on your phone. The more you ignore them, the worse it gets.
So true. Deal with them now and you'll thank yourself later. It creates a sense of momentum, of control.
Definitely. Okay, another concept that struck me is the external brain. Sounds kind of sci-fi, but the more I think about it, the more it makes sense.
Yeah, Allen's point is our brains aren't meant to be giant to-do lists.
They're for thinking, creating, solving problems, not remembering where you put your keys.
Exactly. So the external brain is any system you use outside your mind to store information, track tasks, the stuff you don't need to constantly juggle in your head.
So like a designated spot for your keys, a folder for receipts, a calendar app for appointments.
Yep. Anything that takes that mental load off your working memory.
Makes sense. It's like giving your computer more RAM. Things run smoother when you're not constantly swapping files.
Perfect analogy.
Now, Allen himself admits that while these ideas seem simple, actually putting them into practice consistently, that's the hard part. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's about changing behavior. It's about forming new habits. It's one thing to know you should write things down. It's another to do it every single time without fail.
Like intellectually, yeah, great idea. But actually doing it.
Right. Allen even says his expertise is in the system itself. The real challenge is for each of us to make it a part of our lives,
Make it a habit.
It's like learning a language. You can know all the grammar, but you need to practice speaking to get fluent.
Makes sense. One thing I found interesting is that Allen encourages people to revisit the book, even if they've read it before.
He compares it to rereading a software manual after you've actually used the software for a while.
Because the first time, you're just trying to grasp the basics, right? But then, once you have some experience with the system,
you start to pick up on those nuances, those deeper connections.
And I can see that. When you're not struggling with just understanding the workflow, you can start to tailor it to your own needs.
Exactly. It shows how adaptable and flexible GTD really is.
Now, let's step back a bit. Allen talks about this shift in work from, physical labor to what Peter Drucker called knowledge work. How does that impact productivity?
That's huge, right? With physical work, you build a chair, you're done, you can see the result. Knowledge work is different. It's all this intangible stuff, emails, projects, information overload.
And it never ends. There's always more.
The don't miss the train syndrome, he calls it.
Yeah, that feeling of constantly having to check everything, every email, every notification.
Fear of missing out, but on information. It's exhausting.
Total FOMO, but for your work life.
Yeah.
And then we get stressed because we feel like we're always behind.
And it's tricky because focusing on your real values, your big goals, that's important.
But it doesn't mean there's less to do. Often it means there's more, just more meaningful work.
Right. You're taking on bigger challenges, more complex projects, but you still need a way to manage it all.
Okay, so that brings us to one of the central themes of getting things done, the idea of a mind like water. What exactly does that mean?
So it's this idea from Zen philosophy being calm, clear, completely responsive to what comes your way, but without getting bogged down.
Like a still pond. Something disturbs it, but then it settles back to stillness.
That's it. And GTD is all about helping you achieve that mental state.
So you can handle whatever comes at you without freaking out.
Exactly. Alan even has this exercise, just 2 minutes of focusing on something that's been bugging you.
And people say it actually reduces their stress.
They feel more in control, more motivated to actually deal with the problem. Imagine feeling that way all the time.
Okay, now getting into the nuts and bolts. Alan says managing action is the prime challenge. Why is doing so crucial?
Because in the end, it's all about action, right? You can have the best ideas, the greatest plans, but if you don't do anything, nothing changes.
And I think a lot of people get stuck because they don't know where to start. They have a big goal, but they haven't broken it down into those actual steps.
You can't just do a project. You have to do the individual tasks that make up that project.
So instead of write a report, it's outline the first section, gather data for the second section, those kinds of things.
Exactly. Small, concrete actions you can actually tackle. And then you have that feeling of progress, of moving forward.
And this connects to that idea of mental overload. Our brains can only hold so much information at once.
Like a computer with limited RAM, right? When we try to keep all those undone tasks in our head, it slows everything down.
Makes sense. You're trying to think clearly, but there's all this mental clutter in the background.
And Alan says a lot of this comes from a weak capture process.
Capture, meaning how we record all those to-dos, ideas, worries.
Exactly. Most of us have this running mental list of shoulds and coulds that never actually get written down anywhere.
So we just end up trying to remember it all.
Which is a recipe for stress and overwhelm. Capture is about getting everything out of your head and into a system you trust.
Okay, now Alan outlines 5 steps in getting things done, but he says a lot of people trip up because they try to do them all at once. Where should we start?
Capture, capture, capture. That's step 1. Before you prioritize, before you organize, get everything out of your head.
Do a brain dump.
Exactly. You need that clean slate. Then you can start thinking about what to do with all that stuff.
And that's where the in tray comes in, right? This central collection point for everything that has your attention.
Physical tray, email folder, note-taking app, whatever works for you. It's your safety net.
But a safety net only works if you actually use it.
Exactly. If your in tray is overflowing, it defeats the purpose. So once you've captured everything, you need to process it.
And that's where the what's the next action question comes in.
And that's key. For every item in your in tray, you need to figure out what's the very next concrete physical thing I need to do to move this forward.
So not just plan vacation, but research flights, talk to Sarah about dates, those kinds of things.
Absolutely. It's about making it actionable. Like fix the leaky faucet becomes call the plumber, plan birthday party becomes brainstorm guest list.
And this highlights that you don't do a project, you do the tasks that move the project forward.
Right. Your projects list is just an overview of all the outcomes you're working towards.
All right, so we've captured, we've clarified the next action, now what? We organize.
That's it. And the first organizational tool, according to Alan, is your calendar.
Okay, but only for time-specific events, right?
Yeah. Appointments, deadlines, things that absolutely have to happen on a certain day at a certain time.
Not for your general to-do list.
No. Don't clutter your calendar with that stuff. It's for the hard landscape of your day.
Got it. So what about all the other next actions, the ones that don't have a specific time attached to them?
That's where your next actions lists come in. And here's the key. Organize them by context.
Context, like calls to make at computer, errands, those types of categories.
Exactly. It lets you make the most of your time. You have 10 minutes free and you're by your computer. Check your at computer list.
So much more efficient.
And then you've got your waiting for list for things you've delegated or are expecting from others.
So you don't forget about them and things don't get lost in the shuffle.
Right. Write down what you're waiting for, who you're waiting on, even the date you delegated it.
Great tip. And then there's the someday maybe list for those ideas that aren't actionable right now.
Things you might want to do in the future, like books to read, trips to take, skills to learn.
So they don't clutter your active lists, but you don't lose them entirely.
Exactly. And for things that do have a specific date but aren't fixed appointments, there's the tickler system.
Like a reminder to follow up on something in a month or to register for a conference a few months from now.
You can use folders, calendar reminders, whatever works. And then, of course, there's good old-fashioned filing.
For all those reference materials, manuals, notes, articles, stuff that's useful but not actionable.
Key is to make your filing system, both physical and digital, as easy to use as possible.
Otherwise, it becomes a chore, and you end up with piles of clutter again.
Right. And then all those unfiled things start taking up space in your mind, too.
Okay, so we've captured everything, clarified the next actions, organized them into lists and systems. How do we make sure it all stays current?
That's where the weekly review comes in. It's the glue that holds the whole GTD system together.
Alan says it's like that cleanup you do before going on vacation.
Exactly. So you can truly relax and enjoy yourself knowing everything is in order.
And the weekly review brings that same peace of mind to your daily life.
You review your lists, your calendar, your in-tray, make sure everything is up to date, nothing is falling through the cracks.
It's a chance to clear your head, catch up, and plan for the week ahead. Now, the final step in Alan's framework is engage, actually getting things done. He says every decision about what to do in a given moment is ultimately intuitive.
But the GTD system supports that intuition.
Because you have a clear overview of all your commitments and options, right?
You're not just reacting to the loudest noise. You're choosing consciously based on the full picture.
So the system provides the information, but you still have to trust your gut on what to do now.
And Alan gives us 3 criteria to consider: context, time available, and energy level.
So you can look at your list and think, okay, I'm at my desk, I have 30 minutes free, and I'm feeling pretty focused. What makes sense to tackle right now?
Exactly. It's about aligning your actions with your current situation.
And that includes those unplanned things that pop up.
Right. You have to decide whether to deal with them now or stick to your planned work.
And feeling okay about what you're not doing.
A well-maintained GTD system gives you the freedom to make those choices consciously.
Alan also talks about the 6 levels of work, this framework for looking at your commitments from different perspectives.
It helps you connect those day-to-day actions to your bigger goals and values.
And he suggests that for most people, it's easier to work from the bottom up.
Get control of your current actions and projects first.
And then once you have that clarity, you can start thinking about the bigger picture.
Right. Handling what's on your plate often frees up your mind to notice what really matters.
And even managing those current projects can be tricky. Alan talks about the importance of clearly defining the desired outcome for each project.
And breaking it down into those concrete next actions, that quiets a lot of the mental noise.
It's also about knowing your job, all those responsibilities you have, both at work and in your personal life.
And being proactive about thinking about your projects, Alan suggests setting up systems to trigger those thinking sessions.
So you're not just reacting to deadlines and emergencies.
Having a place to capture those random project ideas that pop up is crucial too.
And recognizing that sometimes the next action on a project is plan.
You might need to brainstorm, gather information, organize things before you can actually start doing the doing.
He even talks about using visual tools like whiteboards and mind maps.
Anything that helps you externalize your thinking about the project.
Now, one of the things I find fascinating is how Alan connects productivity to psychology. He says a lot of those negative feelings we have, the stress, the overwhelm, it comes from broken agreements with ourselves.
Those commitments we've made but haven't kept, whether we realize it or not.
And those unfulfilled promises, even if we've forgotten about them, they still weigh us down.
That's why capturing everything is so important. It makes those agreements visible.
So you can either renegotiate them or finally get them done.
And it's not just about personal productivity. Alan talks about how this applies to organizations as well.
Encouraging people to track and manage their own commitments can lead to better communication, less micromanaging.
The power of that simple question, what's the next action? It brings so much clarity.
And it can be frustrating when you're dealing with people who don't operate that way.
But ultimately, it's about empowering people to take action.
Instead of feeling overwhelmed by a huge project, you break it down into those doable steps.
Alan even has this analogy about imagining biting into a lemon. Just the thought can make your mouth pucker.
And it's the same with thinking about those daunting tasks.
Intelligent dumbing down. He calls it focus on the next tiny step, not the whole overwhelming thing.
So to wrap up our deep dive on getting things done, it's a system for taking control of your commitments, clearing your mind, and ultimately getting more done with less stress.
Capture everything. Clarify the next action. Organize, review, engage. Those are the key principles.
And even if you don't implement the entire system, even just using a few of these ideas can make a big difference.
Like that 2-minute rule, seriously? It's life-changing.
Or the concept of the external brain, free up your mental RAM.
Think about it. What's one thing that's been nagging at you, taking up space in your head? What's the very next physical action you could take, even if it's just a tiny step?
And if you're intrigued and want to learn more, check out the Getting Things Done website.
Tons of resources, a great community, even coaching and training programs.
So what's next on your learning list? We hope this deep dive has given you some new ideas to explore.
Happy organizing.
Until next time.